This is update for July 13, 2022, day 140 of the war, end of the date update. So we're going to start with our favorite topic, specifically scandal that's growing ever wider and bigger around Victoria Spartz, House Representative from Indiana. So today, one of their Ukrainian officials, who is obviously tightly connected to Andriy Yermak, called her a lying, cynical, political animal, and then he called her as well unethical political monster. So as you can see, Victoria Spartz sort of attack really hit the nerve in the Ukrainian political top, and for sure there's a lot of sort of negativity there going on. At the same time, her sort of stance is really gaining popular support among the many Ukrainian citizens. So this is kind of like two different worlds in a way. On related topic of internal situation in Ukraine, as we discussed many times ago, that Ukrainian economy is essentially wiped out. However, the government does everything that it can to prevent Ukrainian economy from recovering and rebuilding. Basically, they enact all kind of restrictive and honestly dictatorship economical initiatives that basically prevent private companies from growing, from being successful, and so on. We brought one example of regulation, government regulation of the price of gasoline and diesel fuel, which led to absence of the gasoline and diesel fuel, and there are still shortages. And now this is the way they sort of dealing with the shortages is actually by government directly buying gasoline and diesel fuel from Poland and Romania. So, but this is obviously not the way to go, because this creates a black market. B, what it does, it's also makes it impossible for private companies to exist and be successful, because in order to get gasoline, you need to get some special permits. Basically, it's a return to the Soviet Union. So this government in Ukraine is absolutely inept, total disaster, and actually big reason of the problems Ukraine is facing at the moment, including this invasion. So they sort of continue on their path, and now they successfully destroyed the Ukrainian economy, and so now they're turning to the West and asking, oh well, 5 billion per month is not enough for us. Can you give us 9 billion? And the way they sort of envision using it is essentially giving everyone universal basic income, which is going to be peanuts, knowing how they do it. And most of it is probably going to be, destroyed through corruption, stolen through corruption. That is rampant there. So this is kind of like, as you can see, the problem that Ukraine is kind of battling. So in a way, it's like fighting on the two fronts. On one front, you have completely inept government that's actually making everything much more difficult and much more worse, and then also the enemy on the front line. So that's just so everybody understands the situation within Ukraine itself and what's going on economically. Then let's actually switch to the economical situation in Russia, which is looking actually pretty terrible. I mean, we gave you some pieces of information in the past, and it was very clear that it's bad, but we actually surprised how bad it is. So there is a data for May and from Russian Statistical Bureau, and specifically we're going to look at the industry, right? Because industry where you have most of the value add created. That's where the wealth's created. That's where the wealth's being of ordinary citizen is coming from. So, and that's also probably bulk of GDP, generally speaking, in any country. So let's just kind of walk through the different sort of segments of the industry and look how they're doing. So passenger cars manufacturing down 97%. We mentioned about that before. So essentially it stopped. Then buses down 77%. Railroad locomotives down 63%. Then railroad carriages down 52%. If you remember, we discussed the shortage of the bearings that Russia is facing, so that's probably affected by that. Then also passenger railroad cars down 40%. Then production of lifts or elevators, whichever word you prefer, is down 35%. Pumps down 30%. Electrical motors down 50%. Then if we're gonna look at glass down 61%. And then if we look at their sort of household goods like TVs down 63%, refrigerators down 58%, and washing machines something similar. So as you can see, the economy is really not even like, let's say, 30-40% down. We believe that the contraction of Russian GDP is going to be tremendous. It's probably going to be closer to 50%. And actually related to this, which actually also very surprising, is oil and gas revenue of the Russian budget. So in June, there were 720 billion rubles. This is dropped from, in May, it was 170 billion rubles. And in April, it was 1.9 trillion. So you can see from April, it really dwindled to more than a half. And typical amount per month before the war used to be 1 trillion per month. So as you can see, this is also their oil and gas industry is apparently is in contraction as well, because Russia was able to export so far successfully. However, maybe this is more related to the natural gas, because there is definitely fewer of natural gas being consumed by Europe, and it's not easy to sort of transfer and shift everything to, let's say, China, because the pipelines are not there to capacity is not there. So as you can see, the actually economic damage to the Russian economy is actually pretty tremendous. It's much more than we expected. It's definitely 50% of the economy is essentially wiped out, and this is definitely better than Ukraine, but this is actually very we're truly surprised by the magnitude of the collapse there. Then on related news about the food security and export of grain from Ukraine. So there was a meeting in Istanbul, Turkey, today between Ukraine, Turkey, and Russia. And Turkey issued press release saying that there was positive developments, there was some agreement reached, and it will be released later. So essentially, it looks like the ability to export grain from Ukraine will be opened, and Ukraine will be able to export grain in the near future from the new harvest. Okay, now let's actually move to our front line. And we're gonna do a walkthrough from the in a clockwise fashion, starting from the very north. Before we jump to the north, as a general comment in terms of attacks by HIMARS systems, they seem to be a little bit down today, or at least there are fewer successful targets so far. We clearly see sort of drop in their in the targets that being hit. Now let's look what's going on here along the state border. The situation is the same, essentially exchange of artillery fire and mortar fire. Nothing new there. Now let's move back to let's move south to Kharkiv. Situation here is totally, so call it, well, we cannot say it's quiet, but there is no even those small scale actions. Essentially, at this point, it's just defensive action by both sides. Now let's move south to Izyum bridgehead. Situation here is the same essentially. Actually, small scale Russian attacks, just to kind of paint the picture. Basically, that's the goal of those, and keep Ukrainian forces on their toes. The same area of the attacks, right? Krasnopilya, Dolina, and this area, this forest. I guess we can call it Ivaniv, towards this village Ivanivka, essentially. Both, in all situations, Ukrainian defenses held, so nothing new here. At the same time, it probably tells us that Russian command keep this area as sort of as important, so they continue pressure, so they probably will use this area to develop sort of their sort of attacks in the future once they switch to large-scale attack, which we discussed yesterday, is expected sometime probably in early August. Totally speculative sort of timing. Could switch easily, can start earlier, can be later, but that's sort of expectation, including on the Russian side, actually. Now let's move to North Donbass front line here, which used to be at our sort of Svitlodarsk, Lysychansk. Now it's Bakhmut area as well. So let's see what's going on there. Situation here more or less stable, which is with one exception, which hard to believe, but Russian sources claim that Russian troops already captured Svitlodarsk. We don't think it's true. Nevertheless, we just want to mention this. There is no verification or anything, so we believe it's false information, probably for internal use. Nevertheless, we just want to inform you. In addition, Russian forces launched relatively small-scale attacks towards this village Yakovlivka here. And then let's look a little bit more south, east of Bakhmut. Another areas of attack were towards this village Vesela Dolina here, where they on the outskirts, so they continue pushing here, obviously Wagner mercenaries, and then also village Vershina. So essentially, this is, again, nothing sort of earth-shaking here. It's not large-scale attacks, really more just keeping pressure, keeping Ukrainian side kind of like focused and on its toes, as we mentioned before. Now let's move south. Let's see what's going on west of Donetsk. Situation here is totally sort of stable, just exchange of artillery fire. That's all that's going on here. Now let's quickly look at Zaporizhia front line, and it's been quiet in terms of actual large-scale action. Only exchanges of their artillery fire here going on. Now let's finish with the Kherson bridgehead, and situation here is the same. With one exception, we learned a little bit more information about this area around Davydiv Brid. So it turns out that Davydiv Brid is actually in Russian hands. So they apparently managed to actually recapture it from the time when there was, if you remember, there was a Ukrainian attempt to do some small scale offensive here, and they managed to sort of move a little bit forward, but then apparently they lost all of this area. So the question about this bridgehead is also remains very open. Apparently, at this point, we believe that the Ukrainian side is probably on the other side of the river, but for sure, Ukrainian side does not control the Davydiv Brid. That's what we know for sure. Okay, thanks for watching, and until tomorrow, bye bye.